Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Community Marriage Initiative Fund's monthly training event for January. My name is Katie Ray. I'm with Marriage Initiative, and I have the privilege of working closely with our amazing CMI teams across the U.S. as they connect with churches and other marriage leaders in their community, really in an effort to serve couples with intentional purpose. I'd like to thank you guys for joining us here today, but before we begin, Michelle Wright in Bay County, Florida, in the Bay County, Florida area, will be opening us up in prayer. So Michelle, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Katie. Lord, thank you so much for this opportunity where a group of marriage champions can come together, meet, share ideas and concepts where we spread your view of marriage to our communities. We know that we're not left to our own devices while in this field that we love. We look to you to guide our paths as we support married couples and their families. We thank you for bringing this team together in celebration and commitment of marriage, which you set in motion at the beginning of creation. We don't take this work lightly and appreciate the chance to pray for our couples, their marriages, those specifically in trouble, in times of stress, when they feel alone, when things are going well, and when they refocus their marriage on you. We come before you today asking for your hedge of protection for everyone on this call, in this meeting, and the couples and families that they represent. In Christ's most holy name, I pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Michelle. Those are beautiful words. Okay, so first on our agenda for today, very exciting, we have Mr. Brad Wilcox. And to give you a little more information about Brad, he is the director of the National Marriage Project at the University of Virginia, a professor of sociology at the University of Virginia as well, and also a non-resident senior fellow at the American Enterprise Institute, and also a Future of Freedom fellow at the Institute for Family Studies. Professor Wilcox's research focused on marriage, fatherhood, cohabitation, and especially on the ways that family structure, civil society, and culture influence the quality and stability of family life in the United States. Dr. Wilcox's research has been featured in the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, the Atlantic, Slate, National Review Online, NPR, NBC's The Today Show, and many other media outlets. He earned his PhD from Princeton University and has held research fellowships at Yale University as well as the Brookings Institution. So thank you so much, Brad, for being with us here today. We are just so honored. And whenever you're ready, you can pull up your PowerPoint and begin with your presentation.
Great, thanks, Katie. Let me just try to get this going here on, let's see, sharing here. And I'm also going to try to make it fill the screen here. Can you all see both the PowerPoint slide and my head here?
Yes.
As your talking head today. Well, I just wanted to kind of do two things today. One is to kind of talk to you about a key kind of set of findings in the book I'm writing for HarperCollins called Get Married. The book is scheduled for release in early September of this year. And I'm finalizing the text and the statistics for the book in the next, basically 3 weeks, I guess. So I'm going to talk about some findings from the book and then pivot to a new report that we're releasing for the National Marriage Project and the Wheatley Institute it's really the second edition of the Date Night Opportunity that just underscores some new research on the connection between regular date nights and marital quality and stability for American husbands and wives today. So those sort of two things are going to ground my presentation today. So when I'm kind of talking about, issues of sort of meaning and happiness, and looking at this also kind of as a scholar, what I tend to see among particularly young adults today is this sort of basic idea that education and work are the primary things that are grounding and guiding how young adults are thinking about, fulfillment, meaning, direction, and happiness. As one of my students at UVA said, basically the thought process is relationships, love, et cetera, are a risk, but you always have your career and your success to fall back on. And this kind of mentality that I see a lot among UVA students is by no means limited to University of Virginia students. We're seeing data from Pew looking at adults indicating that they would ascribe more importance to money and to work than they would to marriage and parenthood in terms of fulfillment. There's also a new Pew report coming out next week, which gives us sort of a sense of where this is all coming from. It's indicating that parents are more concerned about their own kids' work and education and income than they are their own kids' sort of future marriage prospects. So we've got a lot of work to do here, you know, on the marriage front, both with young adults and also with today's parents. But what I think, you know, in terms of kind of making the case, though, to young adults today, making the case to parents today also, is that there isn't like a real recognition of what the data is telling us about what really is, you know, grounding and guiding and fostering more direction, more meaning, and more happiness in adults' lives today. And it is certainly the case that education is linked to more happiness, as this figure here indicates. This is basically saying that folks who go to college degree are about 29% more likely to be very happy compared to their peers who are less educated in the US. And then my research indicates that having a higher income is also linked to a boost in happiness. So yeah, money is important. No surprise there for, I think, anyone in this seminar. And then we also can see that having a satisfying job is linked to a boost in happiness, about 44%. So again, the sort of idea that, you know, education, work, and money are kind of important predictors of, in this case, happiness is correct. But what people don't realize is that marriage actually is a much stronger predictor of happiness for ordinary Americans than education, work, or money. And then beyond that, what we're seeing in the data is that being in a very happy marriage is an extraordinarily powerful boost when it comes to happiness. So, and Carl was, I think, kind of struck when I was making this point before with him and Katie a little while ago. But the bottom line is, as I kind of look at a lot of different factors, you know, in some large national data sets, what I tend to see is that the number one predictor of people's global life satisfaction, their global happiness with life in general, is the quality of their marriage. And that's looking at both folks who are married, kind of comparing folks who are in happy marriages versus those who are unhappy marriages, and then kind of comparing folks who are happily married with folks who are not married as well. So all this is to kind of say, you know, basically the work that you are doing, the work that you are engaged in is, you know, extraordinarily important. And I think you've all probably heard too about the sort of increase in deaths of despair in the US related to things like drinking, drug use, and suicide. All of which have spiked, particularly among working class Americans, especially working class men in recent years. And from my reading of the data, it looks like, you know, one of the strongest predictors there of this growing number of Americans, hundreds of thousands of Americans across the US who are, you know, basically killing themselves in one way or another, is being either never married or divorced. So again, kind of the marriage piece is entering into a lot of important outcomes for adults, and of course too for kids as well, but that's kind of a different conversation. So when I kind of put these things all together visually, you can see here that again, education, money, job satisfaction are important predictors, but marriage is a, you know, much more important predictor, and marital quality just kind of really is almost off the charts literally here, in terms of kind of assembling this from a kind of a data perspective. And so again, I think from, you know, many different data sets, what we're kind of seeing here is the strongest predictor of happiness is the quality of people's marriages, you know, when they are married in the US. So why is it that, you know, marriage is so important? And I think for this audience, not really a tough question, but I just want to kind of make the point, you know, for more general audiences, that Aristotle told us way back in the day that man is by nature a social animal. that opportunities to kind of care for others and be cared for, to love and to be loved by others end up being really important for us, much more important than how much money we make, the kind of job we are doing, or the amount of education that we have acquired. And that's, again, because we're social animals and we derive a lot of meaning, direction, and purpose from our social ties. And the tie we have with the spouse, if we are married, ends up being, I think, the most fundamental tie for, most of us. So given that, and given kind of the importance of marital quality, what predicts marital quality? In my book, for HarperCollins, Get Married, we'll kind of, look at this question through a variety of different prisms and different kinds of predictors. But today, I'm focusing just on kind of the value of a regular date night. And the idea here is that both kind of, given the increasingly expressive character of American marriages, and by that I mean that they're focused more on kind of like an emotional connection between two people, whereas obviously in a different era, people might be more thinking about just, is the guy a good farmer, or is he good at, tanning, or is he a good blacksmith? Is she a good, mother, or good at managing the household. So the idea, though, is that in this day and age, when we are putting a bigger premium on the emotional connection between the two spouses, that communion that they have in marriage, I think date nights become more important in this more expressive marital world that we're operating in. I also would say, too, that unfortunately, Americans in recent decades have become less religious and also less engaged in their local, secular community institutions, whether it's, the Shriners or, volunteering at, some homeless shelter or, food pantry or something like that. So, and these social ties, I think, sustain us both individually and often as couples as well. So I think, given the fact that we are living more atomistic lives as Americans, having the benefit of going out and being social in some kind of way, whether it's at a restaurant, movie, dancing, or similar kind of activity as a couple, it's also, I think, even more important insofar as people are often less likely to be engaged in the church community or some other local civic institution. And then what, kind of is it specifically about date nights per se that, may be important for couples? And I would say, obviously part of it is about kind of just being able to have those conversations that are meaningful, important, and powerful to folks. And particularly here, emphasizing kind of like things that are more positive, not kind of going through like finances or parenting, problems or critiques you want to make of your partner or concerns you want to raise, but kind of just seeing date nights as opportunities to sort of have fun, share dreams, talk about issues of common concern or interest. So kind of communication in that sense is sort of how I sort of think about date nights in a more positive vein, I guess, is part of the story here. A second point is thinking about how date nights can introduce novelty into married relationships. So there's a decent body of research indicating that when people experience novel activities with their partner, they're more likely to sort of think about that, or they're more likely to experience the relationship in a more romantic way, in a more emotional, positive way as well. So I think date nights can give people chances to do something that's new as a couple, and that tends to be good. Obviously, eros is sort of engendered, it's a similar point, often by going on a date night, that sort of kindling or rekindling that sense of sexual attraction between spouses, which is also an important part of building and sustaining a strong and stable marriage, is sort of maintaining that physical connection with your spouse. And I think date nights tend to engender a bit of eros oftentimes, which is good for a couple. And then also their way to underlying commitment, like that you're important to me and I'm going to set aside time to spend with you. I'm going to actually maybe plan an activity to do with you. So I think date nights also kind of allow couples to both implicitly and explicitly sort of signal their commitment to one another and are good for that reason as well. And then too, I think in a world where people often are kind of feeling stressed out, worrying about juggling kids, work responsibilities, maybe responsibilities to care now for an older parent, not to mention other kinds of, concerns that might, health concerns that might be, making people stressed out. Date nights, I think, give people an opportunity to do something that's not stressful. And that's ultimately good. So these are some of the things that I think help us to understand why date nights, can be valuable for couples. And so in the work that Jeff, Du, and I have done with a new survey, we're calling it the State of Our Unions 2022 survey, which we did with YouGov. And we surveyed 2,000 heterosexual Americans, about 1,000 wives and 1,000 husbands. What we see in this research is that folks who are going on date nights at least once to twice a month are more likely to be very happy in their marriages. And what you can see here too is that it's about a 15 to 20 percentage point boost that we're sort of seeing in this global happiness. And it's pretty parallel for husbands and wives here as well. So again, big picture story here is there's a clear link between more frequent date nights and more happiness through marriage in general. And then I mentioned too sort of the value of thinking about date nights in terms of communication. And what we can see here is that for both husbands and wives, although it's a little bit stronger for wives than for husbands, on the left is wives, the right is husbands. There is a much more marked expression of happiness for folks who are in terms of their happiness of communication if they are going out on frequent date nights. And then I mentioned too, sort of the way in which I think date nights tend to engender a sense of romance and a sense of eros in a marriage. And we can see here too that, there's a story that's pretty clear for both wives and husbands and parallel that the more often they're making an effort to do date nights, the more likely they are to report higher levels of satisfaction with their sexual relationship as a couple. And then in terms of commitment, again, it's much sort of the same story to both for wives and for husbands. Making the effort to be together, whether it's going on a dinner and a movie, or whether it's going dancing, or whether it's it's one couple I spoke to recently, rock climbing. Making that effort to do things that are sort of special as a couple are clearly linked to the sense that there's a strong commitment binding you as spouses to one another. And then finally, in terms of thinking about this issue, not just of marital quality, but also marital stability, obviously a very important outcome that we're concerned with. What we can see is that for both wives and for husbands, they're more likely to say that divorce is not at all likely in their estimation in the near future, if they are doing regular date nights as well. So it seems like it's linked to a greater sense of stability, in marriage, as well as a higher quality marriage. So as you think about kind of date nights in the context too of an era where we are seeing an increase in empty nest divorces. And one of the sort of the sobering things that I encounter as a professor of college students at UVA is that I get a fair number of kids into my office hours, every semester, and I teach a huge family class, who report that their parents have gotten divorced or are getting divorced since they arrived at UVA. And so we are seeing also for some new work that's being done by Spencer James and Alan Hawkins at BYU, it looks like there's a an uptick in sort of divorces, beyond the child's, first 18 years of life. So kind of the I think the pattern here that's emerging potentially is that a lot of, parents are staying married until their kids turn 18, and they think maybe it's okay at that point to go ahead and get a divorce. And I think probably part of the challenge that they may have come up with or come up against is that, they were so devoted to, more helicopter style parenting, for instance, being so involved in their kids' schooling and their kids, soccer and volleyball, whatever it might be, football, violin, piano, that they didn't really kind of take enough time to invest in their marriage as a couple. And so I think, given this empty nest divorce syndrome, one of the ways you can inoculate yourself against that is by taking the time, making the effort to have, a date night where it's just husband and wife, and, the kids are left at home with grandparents, babysitter, whatever else. And a couple can maintain that sense of connection, both emotionally, romantically, and otherwise. So they're not ending up getting divorced when the kids fly the nest. And I would also say too that given sort of the research that I'm doing in the book, one of the things I'm seeing as well is that there's evidence that marriage matters more than ever for people's global life satisfaction, because other sources of satisfaction, like faith and like community engagement, are kind of withering in many contexts and communities across the US. So insofar as kind of date nights help to fuel higher quality marriages, they're going to have kind of spillover effect for life satisfaction that maybe is all that much more important, because people are not as engaged with other forms of social life that could otherwise lend direction, meaning, purpose, and happiness to their lives. Sorry, and then the final point here is that as we think about kind of date nights, we should also just be attentive to the class case studies, and just to sort of understand and appreciate that working class and poor marriages are more fragile. They're more likely to end in divorce. And so if you are actually taking initiative in your community to sponsor, advance, promote date nights, you should be thinking about ways to do this so that it's not, high cost, and so that the substance is appealing not just to, more educated and more affluent constituencies, but that you're kind of doing programming that would be appealing to more working class married couples as well. And in some communities, that's going to be, also think about, obviously Hispanic or African American, but just to kind of be attentive to the ways in which, if you are sponsoring some major public event that's designed to sort of be a date night for couples, that you're doing it in such a way as to make it appealing and, engaging to, and I would say even more, maybe, working class couples, and less so to, to affluent couples who probably can more easily afford a date night. So that's sort of the class piece that I wanted to mention. And then I would just say, in terms of letting you know that we'll be releasing a new report, a new edition of our date night report in early February in connection with National Marriage Week, which Carl is, I think, stewarding for this year, helping to steward this year. So we'll have all of this sort of data will be in an updated report from the National Marriage Project and the Wright Institute, which is based at BYU, coming out around February 7th. And Carl will help disseminate that new edition of the Date Night Report. So that's what I have to report for this. And I've actually got to run to a 2 o'clock meeting. So Katie, if you don't mind, I'm happy to answer questions people might have about things that I've presented. And then you guys can go into the next part of your meeting.
Absolutely. And thank you again, Brad, for sharing your insights into these issues and reflecting on your research. This information is also timely. So we are honored that you spent today with us. And yes, we'll go ahead and do the Q&A. If you guys could just raise your virtual hand, I'll go in order. And it looks like we already have a question from Tom. So Tom, you can go ahead whenever you're ready.
Yes, thanks, Brad. Appreciate the material and the presentation. I had a question. How would you view the state of marriage today as opposed to, and maybe you can't answer this, but as opposed to previous times in American history, with lowered marriage rates, it just seems like it's not on the radar, family breakup. Is this unprecedented? I mean, we're debating even what it means to be a man and a woman. And I think that probably carries over to the marriage. So I'm just curious from a macro perspective, what your thoughts are.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. So I have a chapter in the book, called The Closing of the American Heart. And what I'm arguing in that chapter is that we are seeing kind of an epical decline in marriage and also in childbearing. And what some people don't know and realize is that it's probably obvious to this group, but when marriage suffers, you tend to see fewer babies being born. And we're seeing that in the US and many other countries. So I think sort of the bad news to kind of give is that for a variety of reasons, and I would target everything from economic inequality, declining male involvement in labor force, the impact of these devices, and the decline in religion and community that I touched on as well. These are all factors that I think are making marriage, less common in the U.S. and much of the developed world, as well as less childbearing. So that's a big part of the story. But one positive part of the story as well is that because we're being more selective in marriage and in childbearing, we are seeing a slight uptick right now in the share of kids who are being raised in intact married households. So what that means practically is that because both marriage and now even childbearing are somewhat more selective of people who are better educated, more affluent, or more religious, that means that the kids who are being born and raised today are more likely to have married, stably married parents. And of course, we're having fewer kids now than we did, both in terms of absolute numbers and also in terms of the fertility rate now than was the case, say, in 2009, before the Great Recession. So that's, Tom, that's the kind of good news, is that family life is more selective. And at least for kids, that's, somewhat good news. But we have a lot of work to do. And I think also that sort of either the paradox or the irony is that, again, I think that marriage is becoming more important for people's emotional and social well-being as other sources of social solidarity are withering in American life. So I think we actually have a positive message to deliver, which is that, look, what we're promoting, what we're trying to get people to sort of consider, join, invest in. Not only is it important for kids and adults, but it's more important than ever for people who want to flourish in a day and age when other sources of flourishing are less likely to be used. Rosalind?
Here. Okay, there I am. Hi, yes, I'm Rosalind from the Hamilton County Marriage Initiative, the newest one on the block, I guess. I don't know. I'm so glad to be here and hear that information about date night, Bradford. I had a question that I put into the chat, and I'll just kind of rework the question because you did say Carl is going to come out with some stats on those who do date. Is that correct?
So we'll be issuing a report in early February on date nights, and we'll be sharing that with Carl, and then he'll share it with all of you as well. But I see your question in terms of divorce. I've seen a number of articles in the Wall Street Journal, I think in the New York Times, talking about this. I know that Susan Brown at Bowling Green State University has done some work on gray divorces. And then also what I'm saying as well is that Alan Hawkins and Spencer James are working on a report that is looking at the timing of divorce. And what they're basically finding is that divorce is down among married parents, which is obviously good news. But the problem is that they're seeing kind of an uptick in divorces taking place after kids turn 18, basically. So the kind of median age or the median length to divorce is sort of stretching out as it looks like more married parents are kind of working to, or at least making an effort of some sort to stay together until the kids leave the home. But then again, there's this sort of uptick in divorce when the kids have turned 18, 19, 20, et cetera. So
I was curious to know, okay, for those who did date when the children were there and everybody was busy going everywhere, if you compare those who dated during those rough years and those who did not, at the point of empty nesters, do the ones who dated look better? I'm trying to put this in our proclamation.
Yeah, no. So in terms of making this real, and I don't have sort of that fine-grained an analysis, but in this most recent analysis, we do find that people who have and most of our married adults in the sample are parents. So what we're finding is that for the husbands and wives in the sample, if they are doing date nights regularly, they're less likely to be reporting a risk of divorce, in the near future. And then we have some other older analyses that indicate that couples who did more date nights were less likely over time to get divorced. And again, we weren't separating those between people who are parents versus who are childless.
Yeah.
But I would just sort of guess from this work that, people who are married parents and making an effort, even when, it's difficult with kids, are more likely to flourish. That would be my guess.
Yeah. So it's not being captured yet. You think that's something that one day we may be able to make some comparisons?
Sure. I mean, I think we could definitely look as a follow-up, in terms of is the story kind of similar for married parents versus childless, married folks. But again, the sample that we're just reporting on today is a majority of the married folks in that are parents as well.
Okay. All right. One follow-up. Let me ask you this. We have a great idea here, and I just want to know, has anybody else tried this? We're going to try to incorporate a scavenger hunt for our date night out, pulling in the businesses to get them to let us identify something in their store and promote their business for that particular weekend, and get the couples to go out looking for something in particular. Has anybody tried that in their city yet?
I haven't heard of that, and people obviously in the call might know. But one thing I like about that, Rosalind, is just again the novelty piece. I think that's a novel idea and it's a novel activity, and so insofar as it's something new and fun, that's more likely, from my perspective, to engender that sense of excitement and romance that is great for a date night.
Rosalind, we've tried it. We can talk offline.
Who am I talking to?
I'm sorry, this is Crescia Redis. We've tried it. We'll talk offline.
Okay, Crescia, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Brad.
Thank you, Tom and Rosalind. And are there any final questions for Brad before he signs off today?
Christine?
Yeah, hi. I just had a question. So when you're doing this research too, so our focus is really heavily on step families. Do you differentiate between date nights? I know that sometimes with custody, it allowed us a little bit more flexibility because there were nights without kids, but do you differentiate first time marriages versus second or subsequent marriages?
No, great question, Christine, but we have not. This is just sort of, this sample is everyone who's married, basically currently. And so that's going to be, primarily folks in first marriages, but certainly some folks in second marriages and with stepchildren as well. But yeah, the story I've just told you is about basically everyone who's currently married is 18 to 55.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? All right. Well, thank you again, Brad. We appreciate it. And Carl, is there anything that you wanted to say before Brad hopped off today?
I just want to thank you, Brad, for just being such an amazing thought leader. And you are so highly respected across this country. And I know everyone on this call just really values and appreciate that you were with us today. So thanks for leading us in such a great direction. And we're excited about National Marriage Week and releasing this, and how all of our champions on the call today can be a champion for this message in their own community. So thank you for the time.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. And again, I mean, given the importance of marriage and maybe the increasing importance of marriage, you know, obviously work you guys are doing is extremely important. So I'm grateful for your work across a different array of communities in the US. So thank you.
All right. Thank you, Brad. Good luck on your next meeting. Bye-bye. Okay, now we will go ahead and invite Mr. Dennis Stoica to speak with us. And as most of you know, Dennis is the founder and one of the funders of the CMI Fund, and one of our most respected leaders in the relationship and marriage education field. And today, Dennis will be speaking on his vision and passion for marriage, and maybe a couple of other things as well. We'll see where it goes. But Dennis, whenever you're ready, you have the floor.
I love that as an intro. It's like Dennis will pretty much talk about whatever Dennis wants to, and we'll just see where this goes. That's great disclaimer. I love it. All right. So from a time management standpoint, I'm in Central Time Zone. Well, I'll just frame it this way. We're about 38 minutes into a hour-long session. Carl, would it seem fair to you if I were to split that time in half? I'll take the first half, you take the second half. Is that about work for you?
Why don't you take 15 minutes and I'll take 5? How's that?
Okay, I just want to make sure, honoring time commitments. So super on it. Yes, I want to talk about a few things. And so it's under the general thing about vision for community marriage initiatives. But I want to speak about it from a couple of perspectives. One, a perspective of somebody that's been swimming in this water for a while. A second, as Katie says, is one of the donors behind it. But the third is as a current practitioner, and actually I'm going to start there. I think many, if not most of you, have know somewhat about my story. I'm guessing many, if not most of you, have watched the NARMI plenary that I did just last summer. And in it, I shared the results of how divorce has fallen significantly in 3 different areas where we focus in the area of community marriage initiatives over the last couple of decades. Orange County, California, that I was heavily involved with. Fresno, California, and I saw we've got at least one representative. I saw Ron on the meeting. Dave and Cheryl are there as well. So we've got the Fresno contingent. And then most recently, Jacksonville. And it was interesting that you have me on at the same time as Brad Wilcox, as Brad was one of the authors of a study that showed the impact reduction of divorce rate in Jacksonville, in Duval County. But most recently, we've actually started kind of the beginnings of a community marriage initiative in my own home county of Bay County in Florida. And I wanted to share a little bit about that within the context of overall of what we're doing. Because when I ran the Jacksonville project, that was still several hundred miles away. It wasn't my home community. I would drive, kind of a remote type of thing. This is kind of fun. It's kind of interesting to see it here in Bay County. And I should clarify, it's not like we just started work a few months ago. In fact, Live the Life organization hired our first staff member in Bay County, Logan Kirksey / Kelly, depending upon which of his personalities I'm talking about, back 4 or 5 years ago. And so we've been doing the spade work in the area. And of course, we, like everybody, got shut down for COVID. And so just kind of have come back out of that. Really about really September was the first time we started a rhythm of monthly meetings of marriage champions. And September, we had Mike Finley from Family Life Organization come in. October, we had a steering committee meeting. November, we were blessed to have JP DeGance come in. They were talking about community marriage initiative, what's happening in communities. And then in these last couple months, we talked about marriage enrichment. We had a session yesterday. And what's been interesting to see, and we had about 30 people there, I think, yesterday, and about the same number the previous month, is watching the shift in both the behavior and the attitude of the pastors that are there. Whereas the first meeting back in September, it was like, what is this? What are we even talking about? And what we're seeing on a month-by-month basis is more energy in the meetings, and we're seeing more activity in the churches. So even though that we've been operating under the name of the Concept of Bay Marriage Initiative really for just maybe 5 months now, we're already starting to see some fruit and some excitement. And that's fun for me, and I think it's gratifying for the other members of the team that are in this meeting to have that happen. So I share that in other context is that I'm very much a co-champion with all of you, that I am a practitioner in it, in both doing the community marriage work and working with couples. I had a coaching session with a couple just this morning. And so I am in the trenches with you. It's not just a theoretical standpoint. But from that context, what is it that we're trying to accomplish? Well, several things. First of all, it's really about creating a cultural shift in the attitude towards marriage. Because I think the predominant culture right now is that marriage is kind of a crapshoot. Like, some people have good ones and some people don't. And if you're lucky, you have one. And as if we shift that culture to say, no, wait a minute, marriage is just something you can create excellent marriages, that this is a lever we can pull, that we can actually make an impact. And it was really neat to see Brad's data that he shared with us to show how being in a marriage is a major shift towards life satisfaction, and being in a happy marriage doubles that, and it moves over 200% by comparison to all those factors. And it shows, I think it's really gratifying, and I'm hoping it's encouraging to you all as it is to me to see, wow, this work makes a difference in people's lives that we do. And I can say that from the data standpoint, and I think I speak along with all of you that actually work with couples, is we can see it in the lives of the couples that we work with. And that is very gratifying and encouraging. And I was speaking to one of the therapists that was at the meeting yesterday, and she said, we had a chance to actually play a video of the newcomer video from the Reengage program, and they gave testimony after testimony of an impact that marriage strengthening programs have on people's lives. And afterwards, she says, Dennis, this work that you all are doing, she was speaking to me, but I'll say you all are doing because you're doing it with me, is making a generational impact on people's lives. She says, you may take it casually because you've seen these testimonial videos before, you're used to hearing it. But for those of us that are seeing it for the first time, I encourage you to really to listen again to what you're hearing, is that this work is impacting at a very human level, a very people level, and at a generational level. And so I want to pass that encouragement on to all of you. And so now we look in the context that says, what is it we hope to accomplish with the CMI grants? Well, one of the things we want to accomplish really is proving out the model and developing a framework for how do we do a cultural shift in a community? How do we do cultural shifts within churches? How do we encourage churches to really prioritize marriage and implement marriage ministries? And so the work that all of us are doing to be assisting churches, to encourage churches and assisting churches to do marriage ministries, we're refining the model. All of us together are refining that model to make it more replicable for those that come after us. Now, what we're also expecting is that as we bring that to scale, and as we increase the number of programs and classes in the community and the participation of the community, that we will have additional communities just like Orange County, Fresno, Jacksonville, that see reductions in countywide divorce rates. And the more times that occurs, then the easier it will be to be able to justify additional funding into the field. And when we talk about funding, we're talking about both at a private level, but also even from grants, from foundations, or from a government spending level. And the result of that is this whole movement ramps up, is just thousands upon thousands of additional children that get raised in their own two-parent family homes. And if you think about it, and you think about that bar chart that Brad shared with just a few minutes ago that showed how the overall happiness of people in a happy marriage goes up by 200%, and versus, all the others were like 30 or 40% increase. The impact on the children of being in families where the parents get along is just transformational. And so I just wanted to kind of just remind you all about the impact that your work is having, both at the couple level that you're working with, the children level, and then as the model gets replicated to other communities, just the multiplicative effect that these projects that we're involved with are currently having and have the potential to have. And so I just want to thank all of you for being involved in this very important work, and encourage you to keep the shoulder to the wheel, even on those times where it's not easy. When the pastor says, no, I'm not going to take the meeting, or the pastor says, no, this isn't our highest priority right now, to keep true to it. Or even in those times you're working with a couple, and guess what? They decide to get divorced anyway. And I know all of those times can be discouraging. And what I encourage you to do is look beyond those challenges when they encourage, and think of the successes and the impact that your work and all of our work is having. And that's really what I wanted to share with you, really, in this brief time together this morning.
Thank you, Dennis. It's so good to see you today. And as always, thank you for your encouraging words and all that you do for us and for our CMIs and for marriages around the U.S. Thank you. We appreciate you.
You're welcome.
Okay, lastly, we have Mr. Carl Caton. We get to hear him speak today as well. And as you guys know, Carl is the president and founder of Marriage Initiative. And today, Carl will be kind of doing a follow-up, a few follow-up announcements on National Marriage Week.
Well, thank you, Katie. And thank you, Dennis, for your incredible vision that you shared today. And I love, Dennis, that you can navigate that full spectrum. You have a powerful national vision for our country, and yet you can meet directly with a couple and make an impact. And many of you don't know this, but But Dennis came to San Antonio in 2017, and we had lunch together. We had a wrestling match, and I actually tricked him to get the check, and we're still laughing about how all that happened. But Dennis leaned over the table to me, and he said, "Carl," he said, "are you tired of playing small ball? Are you ready to have a bigger vision?" And I want to say one of the things I love about Dennis was not only was he willing to encourage, but he was willing to provide coaching and support to me personally to help us move, beyond where we had been. And we were really kind of stuck at this really difficult place. So thank you, Dennis, for your encouragement to me personally, and to all of us across in our communities across the country. Well, God just continues to do amazing things around us, friends. I think you all see that. And you know that one of the fundamentals of the grant and the grant process that we really want to advance in our communities is this idea of creating broad community support. We certainly want to work in churches, but we also want to encourage broad community support of our mission. And National Marriage Week is an amazing way to do that. Is that it's that 1 week of the year, it's February 7th through 14th, the week leading up to Valentine's Day. It's that 1 year of our calendar where we celebrate and promote marriage, because it's good for us as people and it's good for America. And part of the message of National Marriage Week is to promote both of those. It's good for us and it's good for America, because the social scientists say that married couples have greater health, they have greater financial stability, they have more personal happiness, as Brad Wilcox shared today. And so it's the best scenario of giving kids a better chance at life, as Dennis said. So we're excited about that. The other thing that I love about National Marriage Week is that it connects. As you know, we've interviewed 70 national leaders across the country, people who've sold books in the many millions, all the way to people who've just written maybe one book. But we did 70 interviews across the country. Amy Morgan is our feature writer. She's on our call today, an extraordinary talent. And because we know that our work is nationally informed, is that these books, these resources, they can be applied in any city in the country. So our work is nationally informed, but it has to be locally driven. There has to be people on the ground in communities doing the job that you're doing. Otherwise, very few of those resources reach down deep into the heart of the community. What's exciting about National Marriage Week is it ties the two of those together. Because in this 1 week of the year, whether you've written 50 million books that have sold 50 million copies, or whether you are on the front lines with two couples, National Marriage Week is something that brings us all together and connects us around the one thing that we celebrate together, which is marriage. Well, God has been going before us. He has answered many of our prayers. We are so excited to announce that our spokesperson is Arlene Pelican. Arlene was on the call earlier today. Arlene has an incredible background in television. She is a marvelous presenter. She's media savvy. And we are so excited that Arlene has accepted that role to be our national spokesperson. And so I would ask that you would pray for us as we move forward. Date night is an amazing, very positive message we want to share with our communities. And our official title is we want to elevate the value of date nights and what it brings to us. And I think Brad really elevated that for us. And I'm also want to just talk about some of the amazing work, because yesterday I talked to a guy named Derek Irvin. He's a guy that challenged his church to invest $1 million in marriages in Indianapolis. And Derek is leading this project. And they, through this church, this is a very large church with 8 campuses, but they're going to do 120 date nights for their city in the coming year. It's a really remarkable thing. And they're creating all sorts of processes to make that happen. It's really exciting. So what we'd like to challenge you to do in your community is to talk about National Marriage Week, what it is, why it's important. We're going to email you after this call. We're going to email you some talking points, the talking points we gave to Arlene. If you'd like to use them in your own community, if you'd like to look for an opportunity for an interview at the radio station or television station, or if you just like to get an article printed in your local newspaper, we're going to give you the resources so that you can do that. So we're very excited about how all this fits together. We're very excited that 2023 is beginning with some very exciting notes. And we're so honored and thrilled to have you with us on this call today. You know, just to remind you, we believe that God desires to redeem and restore marriages in our cities and across the country by his power and for his glory. And we believe he is. We are trusting in him and we are leaning on him as he continues to do great work before us. So thank you for your daily faithfulness to advance this mission. And back to you, Katie.
Thank you, Carl, and thank you again to our speakers. I know Brad already hopped off, but we just appreciate you know, everyone that joins us and shares their wisdom, and thank you to Carl and Dennis as well. And as always, if there is any way that Marriage Initiative can help you support you in your CMI, please feel free to reach out to us. And lastly, I wanted to make one quick announcement and let you guys know that in February we will have John McGee joining us to speak, so make sure you join us back here next month. And I know we already had a Q&A with Brad, but I did see that there were a few questions. I think I saw a few hands raised. So we'll go ahead and sign off for those of you that need to hop off. I know it's 1 o'clock, but if you'd like to stick around, and if you had any follow-up questions for Dennis or Carl, we will stick around for the next 5 to 10 minutes to answer those questions. So thank you guys and have a wonderful weekend, and we will see you back here next month. Bye-bye. Okay, and it looks like Miss Rosalind has a question. So I will go ahead and spotlight you, and whenever you're ready, Rosalind, you can go ahead.
Okay, Kate, I had a question for Mr. Dennis. You know, I sent a question to you. I was trying to find it relative to the form. We're stuck here on one of the forms and what it's really wanting us to do relative to the divorces. That has been very, very difficult, even with our city seat, our county seat, excuse me. They don't really have the best of data, but we're working on how to actually present that in the app. But what we don't understand is the form itself and what it's asking us for. So Dennis, is that something that I need to call you for, or Katie? How can we get that answer for that A3 form? I think it's A3.
I am free this afternoon. I'm happy to share a phone call with you if that works.
Okay, would you please, and we can move forward. We're doing real well, but that one we scratched our head long enough, and we need to just ask the question to somebody who knows. But to Dennis, I just want to thank him again for his energy. I right there with him, and I wanted to say for Chattanooga here, I understand his excitement to see that energy with pastors. And one of the best things that could come out of the HCMI in Chattanooga, we have been running a Make Them One campaign for the last 2 years, meaning the body of Christ carrying out God's prayer request to his Father there in the 17th chapter, John. What we are really hoping God would do with this is not just revolutionize marriages and homes individually, but turn Chattanooga and Hamilton County upside down. That would bless my heart. We have been praying for us to come together. And I think when I hear all the good things that's going on with marriage, what I know is lacking, and I can hear the Holy Spirit saying, one thing you lack is y'all are not loving each other. Y'all are not working together to the extent that we think we see some things, but as the Queen said, the half has not been told. So I would just ask you all to pray along with us that every city, but especially right here in Chattanooga, we're looking for a greater result of the marriage initiative so that crime rate will really go down. It already has an impact, but that it would really go down and that revival would break out and people would get saved and they would see the biblical model of marriage, which is Christ and a church. So I'm right there with you, Dennis, as far as what I'm expecting and see from pastors, churches, and believers as a whole. Just thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Hey, Rosalind, before you hang up, I wanted to mention something to you real quick. Sometimes if you're trying to get data at the county level, they get a little lazy and they just give you an easy answer, which is no. So, you know, I don't know if you've tried the local, oh my gosh, who's the Shane guy that over here? like the clerk, the local clerk, if they won't give you an answer, then go up to the state level, maybe the Secretary of State's office, or maybe even the Health and Human Services office for the state. They got to keep those numbers because they get money based on those numbers. And you're probably just finding someone that doesn't want to do the dirty work of digging up how to get your report. We actually called up Missouri, and I asked that they didn't have it in a nice little package. And so I said, hey, I got to have these numbers. How can you help me? And they basically ran a report just for us that we could use for our for our submissions and whatnot and our data. So don't take no for an answer. You seem like a tenacious gal, so go get it.
Yeah, you're exactly right. We didn't take no. We did go to the state level, and we're waiting on their numbers, and we did piece some numbers together. It's just the integrity of it. They just were sloppy. People filed. They don't know if they really completed it. Anyway, I thank you. We had not thought about the other ideas, so we will explore that area as well. Yeah, thanks, Jerry.
Hope that helps.
Yes, it does.
Okay. Dennis, were you going to respond to Rosalind? I thought I had heard you, but maybe
no. I think
not.
we're good. We're good.
Okay, wonderful. All right, thank you, Rosalind.
Thank you.
And Tom, you can go ahead.
Yes, I had a question for Dennis. You've been in this a long time. What changes? What's the state of the marriage movement, would you say, and what are some of the biggest changes you've seen over the last few years?
Yeah. So I would say this is that, you're right. I've been in it for a long time, and you asked over the last few years. I'm going to actually go back a little bit longer. Is it one of my heroes in this movement was Diane Soleil with her Smart Marriages Conference. And I believe that the movement lost a lot when she stepped away. NARMI attempted to step into that position and have done a certain level of job. I'm optimistic about the next chapter with NARMI. And NARMI, for those who may not know, that is the acronym National Alliance for Relationship and Marriage Education. And it's encouraging. They've recently brought on somebody that's going to be by the name of Jonine McKinsey, who has run a marriage relationship organization for quite a few years. She's turning that over to her daughter so that she can step into a semi-paid position at NARMI. The transition of the board, by the way, both Carl and I are on the board there. And so we saw an increase in attendance there at the last conference. And so I'm cautiously optimistic that NARMI is girding up to be able to kind of step forward and take on the role that Diane left a number of years ago, would be my short answer to it. Yeah. Thanks.
And Jason, did you have a question?
Yeah, just real quick, Dennis. First, it's always good to see you, hear from you. Thanks for the encouragement. That was really great. Just, you had talked about you guys, where you're at, and you've kind of been in it for 5 months now. And each month you've seen roughly about 30 pastors and or leaders come to your meetings. And so my question is how are you, what is your messaging? What are you doing to get them to those meetings? We've tried to run some and it's been spotty at best.
Yeah. And yeah, fair question. And so I should clarify, there's 30 people in the room. Of the 30, I mean, I'm guessing for yesterday, I don't know if we've got an actual head count for yesterday or the previous month, but of that, 7 of us are actually like core organizers of it. We have mixed feelings. We're grateful for the ones that are there, and we're disappointed that more are not there. We do follow Carl's advice in terms of making sure that we deliver really good content and that it's a good use of the participants' time. And I think that we have really been true to that. One of the things we did was we took that, if you recall, when you were all filling out your application for the grant application, where you have a survey, we ask people, to rank what are the congregational needs, what's currently offering. We modified that a little bit. In the September meeting, we actually asked each of the participants to fill that out while they were there. And then we in the December meeting, put the results up. And for example, we modified it so on a scoring standpoint where, well, actually, the reason it's asked is low, medium, and high level of desire to implement this. And then we changed the scoring so it was a low, you counted as 0, a 1, medium, and if they said high, a 2. Well, here's interesting. You then add it all up, you divide it out. All the pastors that were there, their average score on the area of marriage enrichment was a 1.9 out of 2. Now you look at that. They scored a 1.9 out of 2. The next highest was parenting. The next highest was troubled marriages, marriage restoration. So we've shown that each meeting. And we've said this, okay, based upon this group, you guys are saying that marriage enrichment is really important, that you want to do that. Therefore, these next couple of meetings are going to be specifically around marriage enrichment. And I think that's been important because it has been that we're saying marriage enrichment is important, which, by the way, we obviously think it is, but we're saying you guys say that marriage enrichment is the most important, and that you're saying that basically 90% of you are saying you have a high desire to implement marriage enrichment in your congregations. Okay, so now let's, as a group, let's look at what that means. And so in the first session that was December, we did a presentation about the different types of marriage enrichment. Like we did date nights, teach out of the box programs, pros and cons on that. So in each of the presentations, we try to do things both talking about programs and then processes. And we identified 3 particular programs we wanted to highlight, specifically Re-Engage, Adventures in Marriage, and Grace Marriage. And at yesterday's session, we then had 15 minutes on each, including we had the gentleman from Grace Marriage Zoom in and do a presentation. So we did a 10 or 15 minute presentation on Re-Engage, and I see Ted Randall's on the phone on this call, and he spoke on that. Logan Kelly spoke on Adventures in Marriage, and the folks from Grace Marriage talked. And so what we were able to say is, hey, we don't have a dog in the hunt. This isn't that we want you to do our program, but we've gone through them. And here are 3 that we think are really great. Here's the pros and cons. And so what I'm trying to say is I think we have set ourselves up now. We've definitely considered subject matter experts at it because we've shown the work that we've done. So we followed upon Carl's thing of, hey, make sure you're delivering value. And then also we followed their lead. Hey, this is what's important to you. But getting people to the meeting, it really takes that kind of a one-on-one invitation. And when you think about, how did Jesus recruit his apostles? It was a one-on-one invitation. And so it's a combination where we will send like a group email out to say, hey, this is the next one coming up. But then we follow up, we ask for an RSVP, and we do provide lunch. And so because we provide lunch, that gives an excuse to ask for an RSVP. Like, well, we need to know how many are going to be there. And so we follow up, and that follow-up is that individual invitation. Like, okay, gee, I haven't heard back from, Father Michael. Who's going to contact Father Michael? Father Michael, you're going to be there, that type of thing. And so it's that combination. And we have standardized on a given time each month. And so the 3rd Thursday of each month, from 12 to 1:30, and lunch is provided. And so that's a number of the things that we've done kind of off the top of my head to try to, but we also recognize is that, by the way, they're not all senior pastors that are there. Some are senior pastors, some are not. Some of them are youth pastors. You can't expect them to be marriage pastors because there's only one marriage pastor in the county, and that's Ted Randall. And he has done it because of the work that we've done. And again, while I said we've had this effort for 5 months, I want to clarify what I said before. We've actually been doing the spade work for 4 or 5 years. And we have a federal grant that has allowed us for the last 2 years to be offering classes and do advertising. So, and I mean, just to be honest on it, is I've got a lot of experience and knowledge in the field. So I'm already that subject matter expert. So I haven't had the learning curve that some of you may have on it. So again, I'm trying to provide a balance here. I do not want to be saying, oh, this is easy, because it's not. I don't want to be saying, no, everybody we invite comes to every meeting, because they don't, so it's, I hope I'm setting an appropriate balance of encouragement and reality. So, yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate it. That answered my question exactly how I thought you would. So thank you.
You're very welcome.
Thank you, Jason and Dennis. Are there any other questions that you guys have for Dennis or Carl before we sign off today? Okay, well, wonderful. Well, thank you guys for sticking around with us until the end. We hope that you all have a blessed weekend, and we will see you back here next month. Bye-bye, everyone.